Hi guys, welcome back to SmallPharmaTalks. Today we're going to get to talk with Robert Annicharico, the owner of Delco Drugs, a specialty pharmacy in Staten Island that focuses on compounding, and see whether it's still worth it to run your own pharmacy. Let's go. Hi Rob, nice to finally meet you. It's great seeing your pharmacy be here for so long. You have a lot of years of experience in the field, and before we get to anything, I want to talk to you about why you decided to go into the pharmacy field.
Okay. Well, I've always wanted to be a pharmacist. I worked at a pharmacy at a summer house that my parents had. So ever since I was, 15, 16 years old, that's kind of what I knew I wanted to do. I always wanted to own my own pharmacy. Um, First year of pharmacy school, I did a project on compounding pharmacy. And that was always what I wanted to do. I really couldn't picture myself doing anything else. And I've been very fortunate to do what I always wanted to do.
That's great to hear, especially now since your pharmacy that you have here is specialized in compounding. How is the transition of graduating from pharmacy school and eventually going into owning your own pharmacy? Because that's a big step to take.
Yeah, pretty much from the get go, I was looking to buy a pharmacy. Unfortunately, I didn't quite have the capital to do that. It was pretty expensive. And at the time that I graduated, late 90s, the chain stores were really gobbling up a lot of the independents. They were paying really good money, and it was hard for a owner to sell a pharmacy to a student or a new pharmacist without a lot of money to put down and to finance it, to take a note, whereas he was able to sell his files to a chain store and get really top dollar. So the stores were getting gobbled up pretty quickly. I looked at, God, it has to be, close 50 to 100 stores. And usually the reason was after evaluating the numbers, it came to where I was buying a job, and I was advised by people I worked for, other pharmacists. You don't want to buy a job. You want to buy a store where you can make money and serve a community and have enjoyment out of it. If you're going to buy a job, you may as well go work for a chain store. My first job was with an independent pharmacy in Shrewsbury, New Jersey, and we had the hopes of opening another store that I would be able to get a part of. And again, Thrift Drug at the time came in, and they were buying tons of stores. It was a subsidiary of J.C. Penney, which was a big department store, and they had a pharmacy division called Thrift Drug, and they couldn't say no to the offer, so they ended up selling their store to Thrift Drug. I stayed on board with them for about a year or so, at which time the A&P supermarket pharmacies opened up a store right here in Staten Island. And a buddy of mine was a manager, not in the pharmacy, just in the front of the supermarket. And he said, "Why don't you come work here?" And I said, "I really want my own store. I don't want to work for another chain." And he said, "But you work for a chain now. Why not work for a chain in Staten Island?" And I said, "Okay." I took the job, always, keep my eyes out, evaluating other independents, trying to, find a way to come up with the down payment. And I ended up staying at this chain store as a staff pharmacist. I became pharmacist in charge. I ended up becoming a district manager. And I got a lot of experience in the corporate world of pharmacy, attending board meetings, the relationship of the front of the store to the pharmacy. It was really a nice experience. And in the supermarket pharmacy, I always say that's probably the closest to independent pharmacy as you can get. Because in a supermarket, you're seeing your patients, your customers, at least once a week, because they're coming in for their food shopping. And they usually swing by the pharmacy and they'll say hi. So it was very similar to an independent. Eventually, a independent pharmacy chain called Thriftway, nothing to do with Thrift Drug, Thriftway, had an opening at a store here on Staten Island. And again, they had said, "Come aboard, we're looking for another store. We'll set you up. You have a small piece of the next store. And this is a way that I can get in as an owner with only some money down, and very very hard to save money coming out of school. At the time, we were making, I think it was about $65,000, which was good money back then. But it was hard to save anything extra. Go out, get the new car, getting ready for your next stage of life. Got engaged, started to put money aside for the wedding. So it was hard to put money aside for a store. So Thriftway said, maybe you could buy in 10-20% of a fairly large independent store. So I left the district manager job to go work for them. And I'd say after a couple of years, there weren't many opportunities for another store. And I realized that, this is kind of a dead end. It doesn't look like we're going to get another store. They started getting out of the pharmacy business because of the decreasing reimbursements by the insurance companies, and they started focusing more on cards and gift stores. They said, you can have a piece of a card and gift store, but I really wanted my own pharmacy. I started doing some consulting work. I knew a lot about analyzing pharmacies. I knew how to establish the profitability. I knew how to negotiate contracts with the wholesalers. I knew how to work with the software vendors. Because at Thriftway, when I was a district manager, I started, getting a lot of experience in these things. So I had friends that were looking to open up stores, and they would call me, and I would analyze their stores. And a lot of my friends ended up buying pharmacies based on my guidance and advice. And yeah, I was getting a little jealous, but I just couldn't find a good fit for myself. One of the companies I was consulting for, it was called Boyd's Madison Avenue. It was a high-end pharmacy. They had a pharmacy on Madison Avenue for years, and they were looking to expand to Columbus Avenue. The original owner was a pharmacist. He had passed away. His wife and their son were running Boyd's Madison Avenue, and they needed somebody to open up this West Side store, which was going to be on Columbus and in the 70s. Beautiful neighborhood of Manhattan, high-end movie stars, and I looked at the location. I had the design built. I worked with the architect. I worked with the wholesalers. I worked with the software companies. I interviewed pharmacists for them. And all the time I was still working my other job. And when it came time to giving them some candidates for a pharmacist, they really said, how about you come work for us? And they basically made it very lucrative for me. I didn't have to worry about parking. I would drive into Manhattan. I had a parking spot. It was really nice. It was a beautiful neighborhood. They were really nice people, and I took that job. And one of the things that I was able to do there that I always wanted to do was to get into compounding. I felt that the Upper West Side of Manhattan was primed for a good compounding pharmacy. I went off to compounding school, established a nice little compounding niche up there. Nothing crazy, just some basic hormone replacement therapy and some pain creams. But it was nice from scratch. It was like my own place, So I got all the experience that I needed for my own place when hopefully that day came for me. But I enjoyed that. Probably after about 2 years there, I was recruited by a company called Harmony Pharmacy. Harmony Pharmacy's goal was to put pharmacies and medical clinics in airports across the country. The first project, it was funded by a capital venture group, and the first pharmacy that we built was in Newark Airport. And that was a tremendous experience. I would have meetings with the shareholders. It wasn't a public company, but in the capital company, they were, I guess, shareholders, they would be called. And I got my first introduction to how that whole business works, how these capital companies fund the project, how the project is laid out, the goals, and how important it was for them to establish a dialogue with big companies. Our wholesaler had to be well known. It wasn't based on the best deal we got from the wholesaler. It was about having the backing of a big company. And I came from profitability first, so the CEO and I kind of bumped heads a little bit because I said, no, I could get a better cost of goods if we use this company, an independently owned wholesaler. And he said, no, we need the backing of this larger public company. So it took me some time to get used to that. I call it the fluff. It was much more important to have all the fluff in the store than necessarily the profitability between the walls. Their goal was to either become a public company or to get bought out. That was their goal. And I needed to get stores open and going as rapidly as we can. The next store that we put was out in Greenwich, Connecticut. That was the first freestanding store, wasn't in an airport. So we deviated a little bit from the original business plan, and it was interesting to see how the capital guys weren't so thrilled with that. Then they put another store, I believe it was in San Francisco Airport. Again, it was very hard for me to get out of the pharmacy. In the airport, only a few people had security clearance. Basically, it was myself and the CEO. I had to close down the pharmacy department, head out to the runways to pick up the orders, and it was challenging, And I kept saying, hey, when am I going to travel out to the next store to get it opened? And yes, yes, yes. And I just felt that. I felt that we weren't heading the way that I was told that we would. And I started to keep my eyes open. This pharmacy here, I worked here as a kid. I used to moonlight here a little bit during some of my other jobs. So I was in touch with the owner. I live in the neighborhood. And I knew he was getting ready to retire. And things didn't work out at Harmony Pharmacy. Myself, we had a very respectful parting of ways. They've since have closed down operations not shortly after I left, and I used money that I had saved up from that job to finally come in with a down payment on this store. The owner was very cooperative with me, took a little bit of money down. I was able to work out a 10-year note. And I took over this pharmacy. The pharmacy was doing about 400 prescriptions a week. It had limited hours. We expanded the hours. We started doing full-time delivery. I brought in my compounding niche. While the deal was pending, I went for some further training with PCCA. And I really came out of that training ready to do some compounding and feeling confident in it. I remember one of the first niches that we had were this is when the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines were still available separately. And there was some belief, was never totally proven that maybe the combinations had thimerosal in it, which could be linked to neurological issues, and we were one of the last pharmacies to stock the vaccine separately. So that established a nice little niche for me, and with that, the fact that we were able to make medications from scratch, and we were delivering, we started carrying some really high quality professional supplements. And all of these things really turned this store that was, I think, struggling. 400 prescriptions a week. The owner was, kind of working a tremendous amount of hours, and I call it like a hamster on a wheel. You can get caught up in, you're running and running and running, and you're really not getting anywhere because you're not investing anything into the growth, or you're not learning new things. And we turned the pharmacy into a pharmacy. We probably tripled the business in about 2 years, and 12 years later, we've had some setbacks, but thank God we're still moving. The compounding is still doing great. Reimbursements from insurance companies have really decreased tremendously, even though they were already bad. I just got an audit now, right in the midst of COVID, a ridiculous audit. We're going to win the audit, but just the fact that we have to spend the time with these things now when we're trying so hard just to stay open is really ridiculous. And we're really rooting for PBM reform. And I think retail pharmacy is heading more in a clinical direction. Finally we're getting reimbursed for our cognitive services. You guys are doctors of pharmacy. That was something that happened, I don't know how many years ago. I graduated as an RPH. Shortly after that, PharmDs became the graduating degree, and the reason why was because they see the value in pharmacists preventing hospitalizations. You don't just all of a sudden change a program from a Bachelor of Science to a PharmD without some type of proof. And it has been proven how much a good clinical approach can save the system a lot of money and save a lot of lives when people are counseled thoroughly. In the retail setting, the way it is now, it's very hard to do. Reimbursement for these services is taking much longer than we had hoped. I think we're starting to scratch the surface. The fact that we're allowed now to give a lot more vaccines than we were. We're at the front lines of the COVID crisis. This pharmacy here was one of the first pharmacies testing for COVID. We're in the vaccination program. We do MTMs, where we're doing medication therapy management. We could sit down and counsel your Medicare Part D patients, and we get reimbursed. Not quite that well, but at least they're starting to see our value. And we're going to be introducing a lot more clinical programs, working on a renovation project where we're going to have a consultation room in the near future. So I think the future of pharmacy, kind of two major things. PBM reform is a must. The fact that we fill prescriptions for patients that have insurance that are owned by our competition is not right in any business. And the fact that we're getting reimbursed sometimes, I filled a prescription today where I got $1.61, 61 cents from the insurance and $1 from the patient for a drug that really requires counseling. It's a drug where A1C comes into play, where their diet comes into play, and I'm supposed to do something else besides count the pills and put them in the bottle for a total reimbursement of $1.61. It's not the real world, Yeah. So we need that PBM reform, and we hope that there's an expansion of the clinical services that we can provide. We're already testing for COVID. We're hoping by next year we get the okay to test for strep, to test for flu. A lot of pharmacies already made the investment in the machines. We will be able to really lessen the amount of money that the insurance companies have to pay for people when they get sick with the flu or with strep, because we'll be able to say, hey, you got this, get to the doctor. We're going to be able to stop the spreading of it, which ultimately is going to lessen the amount of money that the health insurances have to lay out. We need to really start relationships with the health insurers and kind of separate ourselves from the PBMs. I think that you're going to see two types of pharmacies. You're going to have clinically based pharmacies, and you're going to have what we used to call lick and stick, basically licking the label, putting on the bottle, counting the pills, putting it in the bottle. You may have some pharmacies that do both, but I think you're going to see pharmacies separate into those two areas. And as clinical reimbursements increase, you're going to see healthier neighborhoods. They obviously know that the retail pharmacy is a great source for health education, or else we wouldn't have been approved and we wouldn't be on the front lines in COVID. So I feel optimistic, but we need to get the word out there. And unfortunately, as small business owners, we're usually very busy in our own stores. Whereas these big companies have lobbying groups, and we're really at a disadvantage. The schools are a great place to talk to the administrators and help them lobby for us to keep this going. I think it's great what you guys are doing. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Great to hear. So Delco Drugs has been around for a long time now,
yes.
Right? So what do you think makes Delco Drugs stand out and actually survive during the COVID pandemic, during all this time when there's so much competition? You have literally, on this block alone, there's like 4 different pharmacies. There's a CVS, there's a Rite Aid. What makes you think, how did you guys manage to survive all this time?
I wouldn't say thrive. I would say survive. we have been servicing Staten Island for over 50 years, so we do have a great reputation in the community. I've owned the store for 12 years. Our customer service is much better than any big box store can provide. And I was in the local newspaper a while ago, and I touched on this. During COVID, vaccinations, for example, you go into one of these big box stores and the pharmacist is vaccinating, he's filling prescriptions. The corporate structure doesn't allow for a change in help hours like that.
Yeah.
I get the vaccine in, I'm scheduling more help that day. Okay, they're not doing that. These guys, these pharmacists are extremely stressed out. They're not getting extra help. They're making mistakes. And people are starting to understand that. Hey, when I go to Delco, if there's more than one or two people online, I open up a second cash register. You go to these big box stores, you're waiting online for 10 minutes. They can't call in somebody and say, we're having a busy day, I need extra help. They have to go by a corporate formula. You're doing this much business, you get this many help hours, period. Any changes, and I was a district manager, so I know, any changes take time. It's going to take weeks, if not months, to get a help adjustment. And your front end managers are not pharmacists. The salaries go against their bottom line. So there's a lot of internal resistance in these big stores to provide the help that's necessary for good customer service. If you look at my square footage, we're doing 5-10 times that of these big stores. I don't have 8,000 square feet. I have 1,000, 2,000 square feet. But if you look at my numbers, and that's going to be true for almost all the independents, we're blowing away as far as volume compared to these big stores. We just don't have the square footage. So customer service is the number one thing. We go the extra mile. I tell a story. When I first bought this store, I got a phone call from a patient who said, Frank, the old owner, every now and then I would, from an elderly woman, I would lose track of my meds. I'm on so many meds. And Frank would come over and sort everything out for me. Would you still be able to do that? And of course, I grew up working for Frank. I know that that's part of what we do to service the community. After work one Sunday, I went over to her house, and I've done this for numerous people. I've gone to the house, I've set up their medicine, put them in pill boxes. Now we do blister packing, but this was 12 years ago. And this patient ended up on an insurance company that mandated her to mail order or a chain store that owns the insurance company. And she left us, unfortunately, and went to this store and, never heard back from her. She has since passed on. And I just know that her meds must have been in total disarray.
Yeah. I see this as a really big problem because sometimes when you get to these older patients, they don't have a lot of money to make that choice to stick with a smaller pharmacy.
Yeah. Absolutely. We had about 3 World War II veterans. We're down to 1 now. The other 2 are mandated to go to the chain as well, and it broke my heart. I used to love, the guy, talking to him about the neighborhood. He was a veteran. We took really good care of him, and yeah, he's paying $0 for his meds at this other chain, and I think his copays by me were $25, and I wasn't even allowed to discount it if I wanted to because our insurance contracts didn't even allow us to discount them. So that was extremely frustrating, and those are the types of days that it gets tough to stick this out. Definitely.
What do you think a possible solution to these types of issues is? What direction can pharmacy go in order to help people get the service they want, but also for an affordable price?
We need PBM reform. There's a bill that unfortunately the governor didn't sign. I like to think it was because of COVID, and there were just many more important issues that kind of had the bill take the back burner. I hope it wasn't that just the lobbying of the PBMs was so strong compared to us. I hope that's not the reason, but that bill is coming back around again, and we have all the support of the Assembly and the Senate, and I feel that without PBM reform, the days of the independent pharmacy are going to be numbered. I think it's we're all having trouble staying afloat now. Nobody's thriving, especially after COVID. If it wasn't for the PPPs, I don't know what I would the PP money. I don't know what I would have done. I would have had to let go of several employees. I wouldn't be able to pay my rent. So we're very thankful for that, and we need PBM reform.
What keeps you going through all of this? Because obviously you can just work at another pharmacy or like for a chain pharmacy, get paid a really good amount, but you wouldn't have this experience with the patient. What keeps you going through all this stress, all the hardships that you have to go while running your own pharmacy, while knowing that it's getting more difficult and difficult by the year?
Well, what you said isn't really true anymore. I mean, the salaries have come way down. Retail, for me to go retail into a retail pharmacy, I kind of lose, and work for a chain, I kind of lose all of this experience that I have. I am pursuing an MBA because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm at St. John's for my MBA now, because I believe that my expertise will be in the business end of pharmacy, because I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't want to go work retail for a chain store because of issues that I just touched upon. The amount of help that's given. There's very, very little, I'll call it intimacy between the patients. It's very hard to get to know them. I know the chain setting, and it's not anything like an independent setting. You stay with me upstairs and you'll hear how many people I know by name and their kids and, what medicines they're on. You don't have that opportunity. So I don't, I love this. This is what I always wanted to do. I feel that I can be the most help this way. I feel that financially this is still more rewarding than going to work for somebody. It's tight, and I have to make some really tough decisions. But there's not a lot out there retail wise. You guys coming out of school, I think you really should use that clinical knowledge. And yeah, you may make a little bit more money out of the box going to work for one of these big chains, but people are getting burnt out.
Almost no room for growth as well.
Very little room for growth. Clinically in the hospital settings and industry, there's sky's the limit. You may not start off making the money, but it's much more rewarding clinically. My pharmacist upstairs, he's a PharmD. He was just down here in the office doing the MTMs, and when we talk, I said, well, what can I do to keep you enjoying this? It's important to me that you enjoy this, because that's how you're going to be happiest, and the customers are going to see that. And he said, just keep me involved in the clinical programs, and like I said, I'm more on the business side of things, as well as upstairs, filling the prescriptions, and I enjoy that. Yeah. That's what I enjoy. Whereas my pharmacist upstairs, he's much more clinically oriented, and so it's a good mix. And then I have the compounding lab where we're making the medicine. I keep an eye on that, make sure we're accredited, make sure that our licenses are all in order, make sure that we're following our procedures. That's probably the most rewarding, the compounding, because a lot of times, we're making medicine for somebody who's on a G-tube, and they can't swallow pills. It has to be made into a liquid, and we're making it. A few months ago, we had a story about this young man who needs medicine for his stomach. Can't break down food, and he was getting to the point where he's able to date now, and he was worried, where's he going to take the girl and eat, and his stomach's going to get messed up, and we're making this medicine for him that enables him to live a normal life. Yeah. And the gratitude that he showed and his mom showed, that's really what I enjoy most about this pharmacy, is the compounding for people that have no no other way to take their medicine, or get their medicine because maybe it's commercially unavailable, or they're allergic to dyes. We see a lot of rewarding issues with the compounding.
That sounds amazing, because what you're bringing up is the patient interaction, how well it goes at this pharmacy. Like, you know about this guy's personal experiences, what he's doing outside of the pharmacy. Meanwhile, at these chains, they went a completely different direction. You get like a minute with the pharmacist if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not lucky, you go in, you just pay for your prescription, you see a technician, they don't tell you anything about the drugs themselves.
Correct.
Right? So, going on from that, do you think that graduating pharmacy students right now, would you push them to take the risk, the leap of faith, into starting their own pharmacy? Or would you say there's a different direction that could be better for them?
From what I see, there are a fair amount of independents opening, and I ask my peers why, and unfortunately the answer is because there's just not a lot of jobs. So if you have the backing and you can kind of bite the bullet and not bring in much money for a few years, I would say, go for it. Not that many people have that luxury. But if you can establish yourself in a community, and if you have the wherewithal to buy an existing store, and you can bring in new ideas, like I brought in compounding and deliveries here, if you can, again, if you have the luxury of having the kind of money to do that, then I do think it is. I think that's a small population of people that are graduating college. I would say keep toning in on your clinical skills. Work on your people skills.
Yeah.
You guys seem pretty worldly, but a lot of times I have students come through here that, there's no eye contact. Work on your people skills. Get a job during school as a waiter or something. Just somewhere where you're interacting with people and you can get a feel for people. You need to develop and learn a compassion of what people are going through, and then as you hone in on your medical knowledge, you'll be so much more complete.
Yeah.
But if you think you can just open up a store and have no people skills and just grow, it's not going to happen. You need to really identify with your patients, and because that's word of mouth is really what's going to grow your business.
So, what you were saying about people skills being very important within the pharmacy industry, I feel like throughout school, that's not stressed enough at all. When I was first thinking about going into the pharmacy field, it was back in high school, because we had to choose majors really early. So, the way they told it to us, they're like, oh, if you don't like talking to people, this is the perfect job for you. You're going to be behind the counter filling pills, getting an amazing salary.
Yeah, that's what the chain stores are going to provide for you, yeah. But the salary's not amazing anymore.
Yeah. Definitely.
It was a good salary years ago, but from what I hear now, it's really coming down. So I don't agree with that. I think you need to hone in on your people skills.
Yeah, and especially with more and more jobs not jobs, but like more tasks provided to these pharmacists.
Mm-hmm.
Like before, it was a lot of focusing on just filling prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have clinical. Now we have administering vaccines, which was also fairly recently done. They're getting all these extra workload added to them, but the salary is actually going down. I feel like that's terrible. Where do you think the direction of the pharmacy industry is going to head into now, like on its own?
Well, like I said, I think you're going to have, in retail at least, you're going to have clinical pharmacies, and you're going to have, like I call them, lick and stick models, where they're just counting whether that's Amazon that takes that over, or if the chain stores just go into that. I know the chain stores are going to, they're going to try to do some clinical stuff. But again, how do you staff a pharmacy when one day you could have no clinical appointments and the next day you can have 5? You're going to, again, you can't build that help structure into a monthly budget. And big businesses need to do that, right? They need to answer to shareholders. Everything has to be a set formula. If I have 5 appointments, clinical appointments tomorrow, I can call in an extra technician or another pharmacist to help me out with that. And I think that's going to always be the challenge from a customer service level, that they'll never really be able to provide that top-notch customer service. Sunday, we don't deliver on Sundays. Had a senior citizen, she needed her medicine on Sunday. Okay, I send my technician who's with me out on a delivery. You can't do that in these big companies. Yeah, you have your exceptions. You have your pharmacists that go the extra mile, that take the medicine on the way home. But I guarantee you, corporate is not applauding that because it's a liability. I think within the hospital, pharmacists are, really, really growing in their recognition and what they could do. I have pharmacists that work as staff pharmacists are now directors, and they're providing the formularies. They're basically given a patient's weight and age, and they're the ones that are giving the dosing. I think that's really rewarding. I wish I had an opportunity like that, early. I think, although I've always really liked retail, I think that sounds really interesting, So that's where I think it's going. But I think without PBM reform, it's going to be really hard. And I am concerned, and I am concerned about the extinction of independent pharmacy, without a doubt. I really believe that reform is going to happen. When I could show reimbursements of 61 cents, what are we supposed to do for 61 cents? That's absurd. We proved spread pricing. We proved that these insurance companies are billing the state for billions and only paying the pharmacy millions, and that's the spread. And really all these insurances were supposed to do was take care of the claims that are paid to the pharmacies. They weren't supposed to be billing the state for more, and they were actually going to get thrown out of the Medicaid program as part of this new bill. But again, I believe it was COVID that put a damper on that. We hope it wasn't lobbying.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the same thing is going on with the unions. I'm sure these PBMs are billing the unions for much more money than they're actually paying the pharmacy. And somebody's getting a fat check. And these things have to stop. PBMs need to be transparent. There needs to be an agency that I can complain to about the PBM. There's nobody overseeing them. If you're getting a procedure from a doctor and your insurance isn't paying for it, there's a whole appeals process. If an insurance company pays me 61 cents, I have to take it. I can't complain about it. I can't show, hey, this medicine cost me more. I can't say, what do you expect me to do for 61 cents? So I'm concerned, but again, we need this PBM reform.
Well, it was great talking to you today. I think you brought up some very interesting points. And guys, I think we want to give him a shirt before we go today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for the great advice.
Thank you, guys.
And an amazing show.
Thank you. Thank
Have
you,
a
guys.
good one.
Good
man.
luck to you. Thanks. Good?